So Odin versus Kaido is very controversial. There's a ton of people that really strongly believe that Odin was stronger than Kaido, is still stronger than Kaido to this day. And there's other people on the other side that believe that Kaido was way above Odin and the gap just widened over the years. So the thing is with this is that I'm not going to be a hypocrite here and tell you that in this specific case, the anime will be canon. I never believe that the anime is canon. I've documented this many times about the 7 different directors, Oda's very limited involvement, etc., especially after what they've done to the admirals. But in this case, I'm not going to use it for scaling, but I'm going to bring it up just because it's very interesting the way that they document this fight compared to the manga. The situation here, and like I said, I don't like a lot of the anime's portrayal of things, but they actually, in my opinion, cover this fight better, and it makes a lot more sense in the anime. And I'm gonna tie it into what the manga does. Because there's so many like inconsistencies with what's stated and what's shown. We're gonna break it all down. The thing that we need to understand is that when Odin first came back from his journeys with Whitebeard and Roger, he stated to be multiple times stronger than when he first left. Obviously, when he first left, he had that clash with Whitebeard. Now, people bring up this clash with Whitebeard and think that they're going to scale anything with this clash with Whitebeard. It's crazy. It's almost like, I just talked about Fujitora in my last video. It's almost like Fujitora like blocking Zoro, blocking one of Sabo's attacks. It's just casual. Obviously, he did kind of load back up, but he stood in place and just kind of blocked the attack. I don't think in any way, shape, or form Odin scaled anywhere near Whitebeard at this instance, which is kind of reinforced by the fact that years passed and then he has the moment with Roger where he gets completely outclassed with the divine departure. Now, he did have really good durability that we're going to bring up later, but when he watches Whitebeard and Roger clash, he clearly admits inferiority to the two of them. So him being relative to that Whitebeard at that point makes no sense. So I've never got on board with that. I think Odin is the one character in the series where I actually love the anime adaptation of things for really the whole story, more so than his manga adaptation, because the Whitebeard fight is extended. It's a really cool fight in the anime, and then they just make it very clear Whitebeard just dogged him out with the Gura. Even with just the manga material, him seeing the Roger and Whitebeard clash, and then those two being relative to each other and having their big moment, which Odin couldn't even believe, couldn't even fathom, and then like immediately getting sent through the trees by Roger. Albeit, like I said, he does tank that divine departure and gets back up right away. He took damage from it, but he was clearly capable of still fighting, and it seems he kept fighting with somebody for 3 days. Who that is, we don't know. Obviously, anime made it seem as if it was Gabon, but that's not in the manga, so I'm not going to say that. Actually, interestingly enough, you don't actually even see Odin as part of the Whitebeard pirate force that faces off of the Roger pirate force, which is interesting. You could even take an interpretation that he didn't even fight. He was too wounded from the Roger attack, but that'd be stretching things. I think that it's more likely that he did fight, but obviously, I just want to point this out. Now, to bring all that full circle, what I wanted to get across was that he is many times stronger than when he left Wano, returning to Wano to fight Kaido. He should be stronger than all those interactions. You take all the totality of those training. I've seen some people misinterpret this statement here to say a lot of wild things. Some people even think it said that he was equal to Roger and Whitebeard, which is absurd, and I don't even think they believed what they were saying. Other people have interpreted it to mean that he's many times stronger than even the time where he's fighting at the island where Whitebeard and Roger were fighting. No, he's just many times stronger from the day he left Wano. So that's all that this means. Don't let anybody else fool you. With that known, you actually see that Kaido and Odin actually had a clash when Odin first returned to Wano, and it was base Kaido and Odin. They were relative. They had a clash. It wasn't prolonged. Obviously, that's when Odin agreed to do the dancing in the streets and Orochi got into his head, but seeing that clash with Base is very telling, and we're going to reference that again later. So after this, 5 years pass, and over this 5 years, that's when Odin was dancing in the streets, but during this time, we don't get any inclination that he was training further or doing anything. Obviously, he had his scabbards there, but he was holding the heavy burden of what Orochi's deal with him was. I don't really know if he was even mentally capable of making himself stronger. Maybe you'd argue it made him mentally stronger to have gone through this, and maybe he's more mad after end. But I just don't think there's going to be any way to argue he got stronger during this time. On the contrary, though, Kaido's notably expanding his empire and has documented fights with the likes of like Moria. Now, you could say that Moria was fodder at the time. Again, anime adaptation makes it a lot better with the actual clash we get on screen, which could kind of be one-to-one compared to Odin clashing with that same base Kaido. But we obviously don't know what happened in that fight. The way that it looks in the manga, we don't see any clash but they make it seem as if it was a war that Moria was defeated. And I don't know if, Moria was just way stronger back then than obviously he is in the current time. He's just completely washed. The whole point I'm making is that if anybody got stronger over the 5 years, it would be Kaido more so than Odin. So then we get to the final fight, and in fairness, you see that Odin, he was cutting through all these soldiers. They were greatly outnumbered. It was the scabbards versus, thousands of troops, namely fodder though, besides king and queen. But somehow Odin did take some damage from some of these fodder people. At least they're showing scuff marks. Maybe that's just, to indicate he was semi-fatigued, but certainly they're at a disadvantage there. But then you also see that king and queen take on multiple scabbards each. The scabbards essentially just fight those two, which I think is pretty cool for king and queen. But when we actually cut into Kaido versus Odin himself, there's really weird dialogue. So the first thing you see is that Kaido is landing attacks in dragon form, lands a Boro breath, he sends Odin flying, and Odin has visible damage that's added on from Kaido. So he was taking damage from Kaido, he was slow to get back up, and then when he actually does land the Paradise Totsuka, these people say he actually landed a blow on invincible Kaido, implying that that was the only attack he actually landed. It's super weird given that also states the battle lasted longer than expected, and Kozuki Odin's strength surpassed the enemy's imagination. But this kind of could be interpreted in a couple ways too, because maybe it's a situation where, Kaido really didn't believe Odin was going to be somebody that could fight him. He does say something along the lines of like, when Odin first returned, that he would have had a better chance when they first returned. He didn't really know how strong Odin truly was, but if he lived up to his reputation, especially if he joined up with Yogoro, shit was going to be weird. He even said that he sensed they were at a disadvantage. So I don't know, but the way you can interpret this is that Kaido's kind of dogging Odin and no blows are landed, and then Odin kind of just comes out of nowhere with Totsuka, lands that, and then now he surpassed the imagination of what Kaido had thought he was going to be capable of. Here we get this moment where it looks as if Kaido falls down and Odin is going for what a lot of people think to be a kill shot, although he says never come back to Wano. So I don't know, is he banishing him to hell, or is he, just gonna knock him out? Who knows? Probably knock out, if anything. But I don't even know if you want to just make the assumption that Kaido's done here. Like, how many times have we seen Kaido knocked down to just get back up? He's even looked in worse shape. Even when the scabbards knocked him down, he looked in bad shape. He looked in bad shape in Curry Town when Luffy was punching him all around. He looked in bad shape when Luffy's rocking his shit in hybrid with the eyes going away and everything. It's just a situation where I don't think that that's ever going to be cause to believe that he's going to be down, especially with what we've seen Kaido take and his crazy endurance and durability. But in this case, people really staunchly believe Odin was going to put him down. Now, the anime represents it as Odin lands the attack, Kaido gets back up in base, they both go for a clash, and then that's when Odin gets distracted. Now, in the manga, I actually do believe that that still makes more sense. Of course, on panel, you still see what looks to be Kaido in dragon form. But one thing you got to understand is the point of this fight and the point of Luffy's fight later, where he's in Gear 4 and the CP0 agent interrupts the fight, is that they're supposed to parallel. Now, when we look at that fight, what happens? It's a clash that's about to take place, and right before the culminating moment of the fight, in the heat of battle, the glorious moments, Kaido, who's still actually holding back based on the weapon moveset that he pulls out later, gets the thrill of battle ripped away from him from CP0. And he ends up following through with an attack on Luffy because it was already in motion. That's the way they portray it in the anime for Odin and Kaido as well. Now, if you look at the way that this is structured and how Kaido reacts, he's extremely upset with the old hag, he calls her, for disrupting the fight. And he immediately gets up and then KOs Odin, with the off guard, with the distraction. The thing that doesn't make any sense is, if Kaido was going to be mad at the old hag, why would he then off guard Odin? It makes way more sense for it to have been in a situation where Kaido was getting back up in base and was already just running toward Odin with the Kanebo, and then just followed through with the attack when he turned. It also, from the time period, Odin is only supposed to barely look over his shoulder at the distraction, and it's supposed to be a brief second where he's caught by surprise, and then boom, Kaido's attack is supposed to be right there waiting. So the only logical conclusion you can take from this is that Kaido is already in the process of reverting back to base as Odin starts running over, and then he instinctively is getting up to meet Odin in the middle, where to his dismay, he gets met with Odin being completely back turned and off guard. This all happens in a split second. There's no time for Kaido to be unconscious, as you already saw him screaming, as I mentioned, unconscious, wake up, sense where Odin is, understand he's off guard, and then sneak him on purpose. That doesn't make any sense, any way you slice it. If you look at Kaido's face, he's clearly in the heat of battle where it's like, oh, he's getting a boom, and he's coming with that uppercut, with the Bagua uppercut, obviously, you know what I'm saying? So even if you think that it's a situation where, because he's in the process of reverting, Odin's still going to have the advantage getting over there because he's in motion first, and then Kaido's going to have to try to meet that force. We've already seen that 5 years ago, base Kaido was a relative match for Odin's speed. Even if the balance shifts a little bit to give Odin the advantage here to where he can land another attack, even if this attack lands, this is going to be an on-guard base Kaido at this point, so he takes another attack. It wasn't a Totsuka, mind you, the only attack that was actually even able to land on Kaido. There's just no way you can just state that this fight's over. I would just assert that, okay, let's say he gets hit with that attack, now he takes it more serious, as he hadn't been hit before the Totsuka, especially when you understand all the things that he was holding back that we get to see later. If Kaido was done there, you're just basically saying he's mad because, you know, his death was taken away, which I could see people arguing because he wants to die. But then it's like, well, why did he follow through with the attack? He could have just simply waited until Odin was, he could have called out to Odin or even to get him back paying attention, as he kind of lectures Luffy in their fight as well. It's a weird situation. Kaido would essentially be a hypocrite to his own character, which I feel would diminish him going forward and diminish his self-confidence in future fights. We never get any inclination of Kaido having any sort of self-doubt. He truly believes no one in the world can beat him. That's after even seeing Gear 5 Luffy. That's after even having a small skirmish with Shanks. He believes it. Now, do I believe it? No, but I'm just saying that Kaido is very confident in his own abilities and actually doesn't even think that there's gonna be somebody to challenge him. I also see people saying, well, no, it does affect his confidence going forward. He has PTSD about Odin. Whether you think it's PTSD or not, just because he reacts like when Enma's used by Zoro and he like dodges the sword and understands the presence of Odin, he obviously respected Odin. But it's a situation where it's like, what, does he just curl up in a ball and run away from Zoro when he sees he has Enma? Like, no, he just handles Zoro, takes him out, and then continues moving on and just continues fighting. Like, people think that if Odin resurrected, Kaido wouldn't be excited. Kaido would be fucking the first one to say, let's fucking fight then, let's fight again, type shit. It makes way more sense to go in line with that interpretation that he was already going for the attack, the Bagua, and Odin just happened to be caught by surprise as Kaido was already rushing toward him. I feel like it's just a crazy reach to just assume that Kaido is done at this point, especially if this is truly the only blow that was landed on him the entire time. Like, what? Come on now, dude. Like, we've seen Kaido eat attack after attack after attack from even Gear 5 Luffy, Zoro, who's somebody very similar to Odin in terms of AP, Yamato, Law, Kid, characters with Durn Egg, all the scabbards. You see him go through a gauntlet of just absolute insane endurance. So it's either you think that Kaido has gotten an insane stat boost since, which again would still aid the argument for Kaido just being, you know, well above Odin by this point, or you're just basically being disingenuous to think that Kaido is taken out with one attack essentially. Could Odin have won here? It's plausible, but regardless, I don't know if he even scales to this Kaido in terms of like, if Kaido's taking it seriously, like who wins? Because why do we never see the hybrid form in any point in this fight? You could just say it's off screen because it wasn't revealed yet in the manga. I understand that line of logic, but it's a bad crutch because we're kind of just stuck with the facts, which is stated to be above the base form 100% in all physical stats. And I actually think that you could argue that this could also include the dragon form because there's no other outside statements for the dragon form, and it's in reference to him transforming from the dragon form into this anyway. But even if you go with the interpretation, if you take this kind of interpretation that it's just the combination of the dragon and the human, where it's like the good attributes of the dragon form, so like the increased dragon scale durability, is just combined with Kaido's actual combat fighting style, his actual prowess, the way he can actually effectively use his weapon. Any way you slice it, the hybrid form is going to be above this form and has better feats regardless. With, you know, Gear 5 Luffy scaling and all this shit, hybrid form has the best feats. People argue for dragon form because it clashed with Bajrang Gun, but I would just simply say that Kaido would perform better in his hybrid form anyway. It was simply just an optical choice by Oda to make the dragon form clash because the size, the scale of Bajrang Gun, it would look kind of weird if Kaido did it in his hybrid form. But realistically, like if we get out of the realm of the verse, like Kaido would be stronger in hybrid, especially given that he's going to be channeling the power through his Kanabo, which we've seen characters like Whitebeard, like his Basento purposely is able to channel his full power. So the strike he would land would be better. Also, even if you take that, the flaming Bagua is completely different from the dragon form we see here. So it's not even comparable by that, right? The hybrid form would be above. So especially when you see that he was relative to a base Kaido 5 years ago speed-wise. He should be outclassed by hybrid form if they were to fight there. Then also have the drunken forms that Kaido has. Where are those that he keeps getting stronger and stronger? We can go on and on with this shit. It's really a situation where it's like, what do you think, that he just didn't have access to this hybrid form? There's precedent for you being able to use your hybrid form right away. Is it just a writing decision from Oda? Not really sure, but I just think that stating that Odin's above Kaido doesn't make any sense, especially when you consider that it's heavily implied that Kaido's continuously gets stronger. He's supposed to be in his prime now. This one is contentious though, because like Sengoku says that there were no way like they were when they were in the Rocks days. So is that just comparing them to Rocks? Could he have been 20 years ago as strong as he is now? I guess it's possible. You also have Hina and Garp kind of having a statement where they're saying that their power continues to grow. Is that political power in terms of like their empire strength, like they're building their forces, which makes sense because Kaido's added the Tobi Roppo. He just had King and Queen before. He now has Jack, the Tobi Roppo. Yamato, if you want to classify as an ally at parts of Kaido's reign. So that makes sense. Big Mom, on the other hand, obviously has had more kids, or kids continue to age, get stronger. So it makes sense from that kind of lens too. It's super weird though, considering that, like I mentioned earlier with Odin taking the Divine Departure, that if he was able to take a Divine Departure from Roger, which Oda says in an SBS Advanced Conquerors. He also says that this Totsuka was Advanced Conquerors in that SBS. Odin does have Conquerors Haki. Some people think he doesn't. Ashura Doji even mentions this when Luffy used Conquerors Haki in Curry Town when he was unconscious, that was Odin's special trick. So yes, he 100% has Conquerors. How the hell could he not take that attack from base Kaido? Obviously it's off guard, like when the distraction comes for Momonosuke, but you've seen characters like Akainu take an off-guard like island splitting punch from fucking Whitebeard and get right back up and then rip off half his face. Like, you see off-guard attacks land on people and they don't get just like well washed and just completely finished. How many times has Kizaru been off-guarded by Luffy? Like, we can go on and on. Why is Odin just done? You know, so it kind of seems like obviously there was damage built up for Odin, that he was already close to being defeated if it was only going to take one more strike from base Kaido. So imagine what a hybrid strike would do. And then it's a situation where it's like dragon form is clearly the least mobile. Yes, he has weird feats compared to hybrid against Gear 4 when he started using Future Sight, but he just kind of went into a flight mode where he zipped through the punches with Future Sight. Him doing something with Future Sight in a lesser form doesn't take away from what he would do with that same Future Sight in the hybrid form. It was just a optic decision because he has better feats with hybrid after that anyway. We don't even know if he has Future Sight at this time either. So it's super weird. So I think in totality, being absolutely fair, you got to take into account that Odin was partially fatigued before actually getting to Kaido. He had to buzzsaw through thousands of soldiers. They were at a great disadvantage from a numbers standpoint. That includes the scabbards against King Queen as well. So you take that into account. I think it'd be fair to say Kaido still wins high diff at that point. Really, that even may be generous, because I really believe that hybrid form could just truly cliff Odin by a pretty wide margin. But because of the fatigue, because of the situation where it was a grave disadvantage, I'll say it's going to be a high diff at that time. As far as today, I just think Odin at best is going to get to a mid diff. I mean, he still should be able to damage him, but you know, Kaido has better feats that far and away cliff his older self. I really just don't see Odin stacking up today.